Bitcoin is the largest, most speculative bubble in history, and it's about to burst. The infamous big short investor, Michael Burry, is accusing the government of deliberately throttling Bitcoin. What does he mean here? Well, we'll get to that in a minute. This is incredibly important if you're a crypto investor. It has massive implications across the entire market. Now, in case you've never heard of Michael Burry, he's an American physician, investor, and hedge fund manager and founder of the hedge fund Scion Capital, LLC, which he ran for 8 years. And back in 2005, he correctly predicted that the booming U.S. housing market was virtually an asset bubble inflated by high-risk loans. These crappy mortgage-backed securities, these loans with terrible mortgages, where people weren't even living in the homes anymore. Michael Burry took a big bet. He believed that when those original rates were replaced by much higher rates in often as little as 2 years after they bought the house and got a mortgage, 2 years, some were 5, but most of them were 2-year balloon mortgages. He believed it was all going to come crumbling down. And his conclusion made Burry short the market. He went to Goldman Sachs and other investment firms. He said, "Here, I have an idea. Will you sell me credit default swaps against subprime deals?" Because, he thought that these were a great play. They laughed at him. They said, "Sure, you're going to short the housing market?" And guess what? It turned out to be correct. They laughed at him. A lot of people laughed at him. And with that, his killer instinct, he again shocked us all with a brand new set of theories and allegations, this time against Bitcoin, that only now made sense to the public as he starts to talk about this. Now, in February of this year, Michael posted a series of tweets that continue to prove to be valid to this day. He said, "I don't hate Bitcoin. However, in my view, the long-term future is tenuous for decentralized crypto in a world of legally violent, heartless, centralized government with lifeblood interest in monopolies on currencies. In the short run, anything is possible. That's why I'm not short Bitcoin." And it's not surprising that everyone has had their eyes peeled since February when Burry made this shocking prediction. But this time, it's about the ever so popular cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. Now, at the time, people brushed off his words, saying he's a nut job, just hanging out on Twitter. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't know much about cryptocurrency. And he's just more familiar with the global economy and the way things are run on Wall Street, but he doesn't understand crypto. But what he did was nothing to be brushed off. His words indicated that Bitcoin is trying to solve a problem by being decentralized. But the government will not allow a scenario where they lose control of the financial system. He then went on to say this, quote, "People say I didn't warn them last time. I did, but no one listened. So I warned them this time, and still no one listens. But I will have proof that I warned." Now, on the 2nd of March, he also tweeted this, "BTC is a speculative bubble that poses more risk than opportunity, despite most of the proponents being correct in their arguments for why it's relevant at this point in history. If you do not know how much leverage is involved in the run-up, you may not know enough to own it." And then another tweet that reads, "Regarding Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, might bulls be underestimating the already established network effect embodied in the global fiat economic system that chooses a captain and is then beholden to support that captain until said captain changes?" All ominous messages. He then went on to say that most Bitcoins were mined in countries that face sanctions like China, Iran, and Russia. Thus, he described cryptocurrency as being in a race to win enough institutional backing to resist the efforts of regulators and ventral banks to destroy. So in conclusion, Burry indicated that the monetary system is what keeps powerful people staying in power. And giving that away is not just an option. It's not even on the table. And not long after that, news started approving his tweets. Surprisingly. And surprisingly enough, his warnings are already starting to reveal themselves as reality. Just recently, India declared that they banned all cryptocurrencies ownerships with more than 8 million of its population already invested in them. Then they walked that back. And then China banning mining in China. And then, of course, they had to walk this back. And then, of course, we had the IMF saying, "Hey, El Salvador, you want to allow cryptocurrency? You want to allow Bitcoin as legal tender? We're not on board with that." And this is not the only place where crypto got banned. In Nigeria, too, the news of banning the digital currencies has caused Nigerian investors to feel extreme distrust towards their own government. And the last zinger is the idea of banning crypto has been discussed in the American Congress and has been covered by Forbes in an article published back in 2019 called U.S. Lawmakers Are Realizing They Can't Ban Bitcoin. And in it, they say that all users of Bitcoin have one thing in common, which is the fear of the governments when it comes to banning their use of Bitcoin, which realistically cannot happen. Look, I had Ron Paul, former presidential candidate Ron Paul, on my show. And while he's in favor of the people's currency, he did warn when I interviewed him. And I'll play it here, where he specifically said he doesn't trust central governments to allow these types of currencies to run rampant. Listen to him kind of laugh about it. He doesn't trust these governments and these central banks at all.
And you just described why. Well, they'll never be able to curtail the transmission of the Bitcoin. That's where my experience with just looking at history and looking at Congress and looking at Washington and looking at gold. Look at what they did in 1933. The first thing they did was turn in your gold. You said, well,
Right.
you can't turn in crypto. I'll tell you, I think the government is so powerful. And I read the stories, even though I don't understand how they figure it out. But I've read stories where people were, and talked to people who, at the exchanges, they found out that they made some profits and they were called to tax by the IRS. Some of the conferences I went to, they say, "Oh yes, we should be regulated by the SEC. That'll give us, it'll make us look credible and authentic." I said, "Well, you can do that. Yeah, you're lobbying for that? I don't lobby for that kind of stuff because the government is the problem, whether it's a gold standard or a paper standard." And your argument would be a very valuable argument, and that's why I would argue that I'm in favor of exactly what you want. And that is that you can use crypto and make whatever you can, keep it from the government being able to come in. It's just that I have a ways to go before all of a sudden I am going to become confident that my government is going to take care of me and protect my liberty. The clowns I worked with in Washington, they're not going to take care of you or me. They're going to support. They're going to support the people who want power.
Look, the whole point of cryptocurrency, and Bitcoin in particular, is that it's decentralized, meaning that it cannot be controlled by any specific group or individual. You don't need to be online to own Bitcoin either. You can own it via a hardware wallet, right? Which means that no regulation or way that government can actually track this coin. You could grab one of these, like a Ledger hardware crypto wallet. Have it right here on my desk. Senator Mike Crapo has said in a meeting, if the United States were to decide, and I'm not saying that it should, if the United States were to decide that we don't want cryptocurrency to happen in the United States and tried to ban it, I'm pretty confident we couldn't succeed in doing that because this is a global innovation. Another senator, Jeremy Allaire, said, I think the challenge that we all face with this is some of these cryptocurrencies, they are literally just a piece of open source software. There's nothing else. It exists in the internet. It's open source software. Anyone can implement it. It runs wherever the internet runs. And these have monetary policy where these assets are algorithmically generated. That is a challenge that every government in the world now faces. That money, digital money, will move frictionlessly everywhere in the world at the speed of the internet. They'll try to stop it. However, Congressman Brad Sherman has made his opinion clear about opposing the pro-crypto opinions voiced so far, saying that the United States needs a bill to outlaw cryptocurrency because that's what gives people the power. Take a look at the video. Look at this.
I look for colleagues to join with me in introducing a bill to outlaw cryptocurrency purchases by Americans so that we nip this in the bud, in part because not an awful lot of our international power comes from the fact that the dollar is the standard unit of international finance and transactions. Clearing through the New York Fed is critical for major oil and other transactions, and it is the announced purpose of the supporters of cryptocurrency to take that power away from us, to put us in a position where the most significant sanctions we have on Iran, for example, would become irrelevant. So whether it is to disempower our foreign policy, our tax collection enforcement, or our traditional law enforcement, the purposes of cryptocurrency, the advantage it has over sovereign currency, is solely to aid in the disempowerment of the United States and the rule of law.
So as you can see, the government cannot actually ban Bitcoin. However, with major corporations stirring away from the monetary systems and towards crypto investments, the future is anyone's guess. But as of recently, and as of most of you already know, Bitcoin has already actually been going down in value more and more, hovering around that $33,000, $34,000 range. And we'll see how well this video ages. And if Bitcoin drops to 28,000 before surging to 70, who knows? But it does raise many questions. Was Michael Burry right about his prediction? Was the government the reason why Bitcoin is falling behind? So let me know what you think down in the comments. Is Michael Burry correct? And please subscribe to the channel if you're new here. We cover the markets. We help you become a smarter and more intelligent investor. We help you make money. That's the whole goal of this channel. We'll see you next time, everyone.